It's time to lose that excess fat once and for all. But which diet do you choose? Low fat or low carb? Those are two of the main options, but which one is best for weight loss? Let's take a look at what science says, as well as how it applies to real life in this video. Check it out. Hi, I'm Ingunn, a Norwegian Viking living in Canada. I'm here every week to share the no BS truth about weight loss, fitness and healthy lifestyle. It's based on science, yet it's made super simple. The ideas behind low carb and low fat are a bit different. Remember, we're talking about weight loss here, and it's not just about calories. Though for low fat, it kind of is about calories. Fat is the most energy-dense macronutrient. In 1 gram of fat, there is about 9 calories. In 1 gram of carbs, there's about 4 calories, and the same for protein. So by limiting the amount of fat that we eat, we may drastically limit the amount of calories that we eat. And of course, it's easy to think that eating fat makes us put on fat. So restricting the amount of fat may help us lose the fat. Though it's a bit more complicated than that. Now, the idea behind low carb is a bit more sophisticated, if you like. It has to do with keeping insulin levels in our bodies low. So our bodies secrete the hormone insulin when our blood sugar level goes above normal, which happens after we eat, especially when we eat carbs. So what does this have to do with weight loss? Well, insulin, in a way, tells our fat cells to not release fat to be burned as fuel. So in a way, insulin makes it more difficult for us to burn fat and therefore lose fat. And in addition, insulin, in a way, helps excess glucose that's in the blood be stored in our fat cells as fat. So in a way, insulin actually helps us gain fat as well. Now, it's important to note that this happens all the time in everyone, normal weight people as well. However, the idea with a low carb diet is that we may decrease the levels of insulin, and maybe more importantly, decrease the amount of time that we have elevated levels of insulin. And that this way we may more easily burn the fat that we already have stored in our bodies, and also don't store as much excess glucose as fat in our fat cells. Now, it's a lot more complicated and there's a lot more going on, so I hope you get the general idea. If you want to know more about insulin, I have created a separate video only about insulin, so go check it out. I'll link to it in the description of this video. Now, very shortly, I'm going to share with you who's the winner, low carb or low fat diets when it comes to weight loss. First, though, I do want to mention one thing. Both low carb and low fat diets can be used as tools for weight loss. However, neither of them actually explain why so many people have become overweight or obese these days. It's perfectly possible to eat a high carb diet or even a high fat diet and still be of normal weight and have a great metabolic health. This is important because that means that there's something else that has changed in the last few decades that have caused so many people to become overweight, and something else that needs to change for all of us to go back to being of normal weight. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in this video, though this video really is about low fat versus low carb. So let's take a look at that. So what does science say about low carb versus low fat when it comes to weight loss? There are a lot of studies on this. If we take a look at the controlled studies where participants stick to their diets and the diets are truly low carb and low fat, there really is a clear winner, namely low carb. However, if we look at more real life scenarios and over the long run, there really seems to be more of a tie between the two diets. That may sound a bit strange. So let's take a look at a few studies to see what's going on here. By the way, please take a moment to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so that you'll be notified when my next video comes out. And remember also to follow me on Instagram at Viking Ingunn. Now, here's a study that I've often referred to in the past, where they took 42 obese women and they were either put on a low-carb diet where they were allowed to eat as much as they would like, or a low-fat diet that was calorie restricted. They followed these diets for 6 months, and this is what happened. The very low-carb diet group lost on average 8.5 kilograms, while the low-fat diet group lost on average 3.9 kilograms. Meaning the low-carb diet group lost on average more than twice as much as the low-fat diet group. And remember, the low-carb diet group wasn't even told to restrict calories, so they naturally restricted calories. Now, this study had 119 participants randomly assigned to either a low-carbohydrate ketogenic diet or a calorie-restricted low-fat diet. And after 6 months, what they found was that the low-carb ketogenic diet group lost on average 12.9 kilograms, while the calorie-restricted low-fat diet group lost on average 6.7 kilograms. Plus, the study also mentions that the low-carb ketogenic diet group experienced less hunger. There seems to be a trend here, doesn't it? Now, we can also look at meta-analysis, which are studies where they have looked at past studies to see a bunch of different past studies to see if there is an overall trend in their results. If we look at meta-analysis where the low-carb diet groups ate less than 130 grams of carbs, which is usually considered to be a low-carb diet, here's some of what they conclude. This study found that individuals assigned to a very low carbohydrate ketogenic diet achieved a greater weight loss than those assigned to a low-fat diet in the long term. And in this study, they say that low-carb diet was associated with modest but significantly greater improvements in weight loss in studies from 8 weeks to 24 months in duration. And then we have those with a bit more modest conclusions. For instance, this one says that these findings suggest that low-carbohydrate diets are at least as effective as low-fat diets at reducing weight and improving metabolic risk factors. And this one says that low-carbohydrate non-energy restricted diets appear to be at least as effective as low-fat energy restricted diets in inducing weight loss for up to 1 year. The latter one is pretty interesting because it actually says that even when the low carbohydrate diet is not energy restricted, meaning you can eat as much as you would like, it can still be just as effective, at least just as effective as an energy restricted low-fat diet. And that's a pretty big point because in real life, most people would want to be able to eat as much as they would like and still lose weight. With a low-carb diet, that may be a lot easier than with a low-fat diet. Now, here's a single study that may shine a bit of light when it comes to how all of this fits into a real-life scenario. This study found that the low-carbohydrate diet produced a greater weight loss for the first 6 months, but the difference was not significant at 1 year. So what happened here? Why was it significant at 6 months but not at 1 year? One other thing that's very important that they also mentioned is that adherence was poor and attrition was high in both groups. So of course, if the participants didn't really stick to the diets, this study can't really tell whether a low-carb or a low-fat diet is best for weight loss. If you look at this graph, after 6 months, the low-carb diet group started gaining weight. So the weight loss not being significantly different at 1 year probably had more to do with the participants not actually sticking to the diet. This can happen in a lot of studies where participants over long periods of time are basically left to their own devices, which actually is more of a real-life scenario as well. So, in controlled studies where participants follow the diet and the low-carb diet is an actual low-carb diet or maybe even a very low-carb diet, there really seems to be a clear winner: low-carb. However, more importantly, especially over the long run and in a real-life scenario, is that we must stick to the diet, no matter if it's a low-carb or low-fat. Now, this is where I would like to add a few things, because It's not only about macronutrients when it comes to choosing which diet works best for weight loss and works best for your specific scenario either. It is possible to stay at a healthy weight or even lose weight on a high fat diet or even a high carb diet. It's possible. Again, we can use low fat or low carb as tools in order to lose weight, though there's something else to this. So I'm gonna just mention a few things that I think are very important. Number one, eating real food. And when I say real food, I mean mostly single ingredient, non-processed foods, maybe some that are minimally processed, for instance. If we eat only real food, it can be very satiating and very difficult to overeat. It's also nutritious and I'd say the healthiest way we can eat. Plus, it can be quite tasty as well. It just depends on what foods you choose. Number two is choosing foods that we enjoy. Like I just said, it depends on which foods you choose. Real food can be quite tasty. And it's very important for us to enjoy the food that we eat, because if we enjoy, we're more likely to stick with the diet. Or maybe stick to the healthy lifestyle, which is my point number 3, which is making it a lifestyle rather than a diet. We can, for instance, use low carb as a tool to lose weight, though it's not only about carbs, because we know that it's possible to even eat a high carb diet and be of normal weight. So something else is the reason why so many people have gained too much weight. And being very restrictive, especially on, for instance, carbs, which a lot of people are used to eating quite a lot of carbs. So if we're too restrictive, we're not necessarily going to stick with this type of diet for forever. And what happens after you lose the weight and you feel, oh, now I deserve to eat more of what I used to eat, and then you're going to go back to the old eating habits and you're going to gain the weight back again. This happens to so many people, so it's so important to, instead of going on a diet, or even if you do go on a diet, eventually you will have to make a lifestyle change. And I believe it all starts with eating real food that we enjoy and that is also satiating, so that we naturally restrict the amount of calories that we eat. If we all simply ate real food and only that, I do not believe there would be any metabolic health crisis, and pretty much no need for people to go on a diet either. So, to sum it up, low carb seems to be the clear winner when people actually stick to that diet. Though over the long run and in real life scenarios, there may be more of a tie between low fat and low carb when people don't really stick to their diets. Which again brings me back to how we should be eating real food and make it into a lifestyle rather than a diet. If you haven't already done so, head over to vikingingun.com right now and download my free guide called Hack Your Way Out of 3 Weight Loss Mistakes Almost Everyone Makes. There I show how it's possible to burn more calories without lifting a finger, it's science-based, among other things. So head over to vikingingun.com right now and download this free guide. First though, I would really appreciate if you give this video a thumbs up, a heart, or a like, depending on where you're watching from. And then I guess I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.